Good morning, everybody. Great to be back after the first part last week. And I'm really excited about this one today because the reason that JDS Strategists exists actually is because we believe the world of direct-to-consumer is misunderstood and misinterpreted and seen as something that just operates in a silo. And what we're trying to do is get the message out that it has to form part of a much broader business plan, including, of course, retail. Now, before we get into that, I wanted to just recap from last week. For those of you that weren't there, or maybe some of you have forgotten, we touched on a couple of key points. The first was why direct-to-consumer is really important. And we talked about how customers are increasingly buying online. And furthermore, how your website is the most trusted place for information and the preference for customers buying from. And then we looked at it from a more of a company perspective, and the fact that direct to consumer from your own website gives you a lot more commercial control and all of the benefits that come with that, ultimately resulting in more profit if it's done right. And then we went into detail on the 5 most common mistakes that we see being made when we talk to prospective clients or we start new engagements. We worked through lack of commercial accountability and how you need to identify one senior person that is ultimately responsible for performance. We looked at or talked about bad choices and how, particularly in the last few years, companies have rushed to get their direct-to-consumer proposition live, and that's resulted in, investing in the wrong areas or investing too early. We'll come back to channel management because that's what we're going to talk about primarily today. We also touched on not knowing the customer, and if that customer might be different to your traditional customer that buys via retail, and that's a really important part of the puzzle to make sure that it works. And then finally, that there is sometimes no visible value proposition. You have to make it really clear and very visible as to why customers should buy. But as I just said, we're going to spend today talking about channel management and going deeper, much deeper into this topic. And we'll break that out into 3 sections, as always. We'll start with why retail is really important. We'll then look at how you manage the human-to-human relationships with your retailers and your buyers. And then finally, how you can manage that across the different channels, both retail and direct-to-consumer. But let's start with why retail matters, which to some of you might be very obvious and to some it might be less obvious. But we'll start with the data, as we often do at JDS. And I've just shown this slide, or just shown this graph, sorry, a couple of slides ago. And what it shows is that customers are increasingly buying online. But just take a step back and don't get drawn into the trend. And you'll realize very quickly that actually still about 75% of total retail sales in the UK transact in a physical store or offline. Now, this obviously is very dependent, on what category that you operate in and also the customer or the customer groups that are buying your category. But the point remains is that the majority of consumer products bought in the UK are still bought in a physical setting. So that's the data. What I want to do now is share a story with you from my bank holiday weekend. This is an actual picture of my house. That's my dog, my puppy, bottom right. And we embarked, like many households did probably over the weekend, on DIY and gardening. You can see some of my dodgy work at the back there on the fence. But we very quickly realized at the start of this work, I think it was Sunday or Monday, that we needed a new drill. So we then entered into a customer journey. This is a framework that we share in pretty much every webinar. It's really central to how we work at JDS. And as I said, we got the drill out. We realized it wasn't fit for purpose. And we were very quickly triggered into market because we needed a drill very quickly. So the next question I ask myself is, well, where can I buy a drill? I don't say this out loud. I'm doing this all in my head and it takes a couple of seconds. And I automatically go, right, there's a B&Q around the corner. I know B&Q sell drills. So I'm going to drive around there, hopefully pick one up, and then I can get on with my project. And after getting to B&Q, I then take far too long to find the right section. And ignore this picture, I've had to take it from Google, but it does a job of demonstrating really quite how poor the displays are still in most retail stores. I'm not picking on B&Q, but most merchandising in most retail is still quite bad. But I managed to muddle through, and I ended up buying a DeWalt combi drill. It was what we needed. I managed to figure out, based on the information, that it would probably be fit for purpose. But ultimately, when I reflected on this in preparation for this webinar, I asked myself, why did I buy that drill? Well, first of all, it was on promotion. And in the UK, about 2/3 of non-food products are bought on promotion. We are, as a society, addicted to price promotions. So that very much caught my attention. And then secondly, I recognized the brand. And furthermore, I had a positive perception of the brand. Now, I cannot for the life of me tell you when I saw a DeWalt advert or a piece of sponsorship or another DeWalt product, either in someone else's house or through my sort of day-to-day and life events. But something in the back of my mind said, oh, I recognize these guys, and I think they make okay products, and I think they'll make a good enough drill. And that good enough point is really important. The majority of customers only looking for good enough in most categories. And that then lends itself to a really fundamental marketing rule or law. And this comes directly from a book called How Brands Grow. Some of you will have read this, I'm sure. If you haven't, pick it up. It's probably the most important marketing textbook written in the last decade. And in this book, they talk a lot about a principle called physical availability. You need your products to be available to buy wherever customers shop. And that is about having a great presence in those stores, both physically and online, being very prominent in those stores. So, for example, on Monday in B&Q, I walked past a few gondola ends that had some competitors on there, and that very much caught my attention. And then finally, making sure that your product categories are positioned in relevant places within those stores, but being physically available to buy where your customers shop or your target market shops is critically important. But there's a second element to this, which is called mental availability. And that is to be known by your prospective customers, so you are considered when that customer comes into market to buy. And this is what happened to me with DeWalt. I don't love the brand. I'm just aware that they exist. I recognize the branding. They are distinctive. I associated power tools with DeWalt and had a fairly positive perception, probably drummed into me subconsciously over the last 5 to 10 years through various marketing campaigns and other sources. But the point to bring it back to why retail matters is not only is the physical availability very important and quite obvious, you need to be wherever your customers shop. And in that instant, on Monday, I didn't use online at all. You know, I'm a prolific Amazon shopper and I shop online quite a lot, but on that specific day, I didn't. I'm a human and we don't operate in the same way all the time. So that's a very, very obvious one. But this mental availability, the important bit with retail is that being available to buy in a retailer also strengthens your brand. It gives you immediate credibility with customers, and they might see you in store when they go in to buy another product, and they obviously won't buy you that day, but it's starting to build a brand awareness and then ultimately salience, and it's driving that mental availability. So this is why, from a customer journey perspective, being physically available and also using retail to strengthen the perception of your brand is really important. That's why retail matters. There is a third point, slightly sort of more current day. I wrote an article and I shared this last week in part 1 in April about everything that is going on from a macro perspective and the impact that that's having on the consumer durable landscape. And one of those points was all about media inflation and particularly digital advertising. Now, we're seeing inflation run at 200%, 300%, 400% year on year for clicks via Google or through social. And furthermore, we've also got these massive attribution issues because of Apple's change to their iOS software, which makes it very difficult for Facebook to track. And that's what's really attractive about digital marketing to lots of people. The point here, though, isn't that necessarily. The point is, if you are all in on direct to consumer and you only sell via marketplaces and your website, you're in a really bad spot at the moment because you haven't got any hedge. You've got no distribution across any other channels. And when like an extreme, it's an extreme macro environment broadly, but when an extreme event happens in a channel, a little bit like, let's say, one Kingfisher a few years ago, if you were solely reliant on B&Q back then, you were in a lot of trouble because you knew huge change was coming. We're seeing the same thing in the digital space at the moment. And if you are all in on only one channel or one retailer, then you are far less able to weather some of these storms. So there is an argument there that having a broader spread of products across more channels gives you more protection and effectively hedges any of these things against any of these things happening. So that is why retail matters. Let's move on specifically to managing relationships with your buyers. And this is probably the number one sort of blocker or barrier to most of the brands that we talk to for really going after direct to consumer. They're really worried that of what will happen and how retailers will respond. And let's get real for a second, right? Retailers do not like brands going direct to consumer. And it's fairly obvious why. We can empathize. I'm sure everybody on this call can empathize with why retailers don't like that, because you're going into direct competition with them. And in an online setting, at least, as we've seen in the research last week, customers prefer to buy directly from the brand if they can discover you. So naturally, retailers see this as increased competition from the people that they're buying from. So it's very, very obvious that they're not going to like this, but they do understand. And here's the thing, right? 2 or 3 years ago, when I first started presenting keynotes on direct to consumer, I used the word happening. The direct to consumer revolution is happening. It had already happened in some markets and in some categories, but broadly speaking, it was happening in 2019, 2020. In 2022, it's happened, right? There are not many brands anymore that are not selling direct to consumer in some capacity online. And if you're one of them that still hasn't made that leap, then it's not going to be a huge surprise to the buyer. They're not going to like it. They're not going to say this to you. They're not going to say that they understand and they're overjoyed with it, but they are going to realize that this is an evolution of what's happening in the world of consumer products and in retail. Now, whilst I say that it's happened, what we see is most brands are doing this really badly. And we're going to touch on this in the third part of today and also in the subsequent parts. But the point here is that the revolution has happened, and this isn't going to be a huge shock that you're either starting direct to consumer or you're starting to give it a little bit more focus. Now, having said that, there of course is risk. And what we encourage and we often work through with when we're working with clients is a scenario plan. What could buyers do? Ask yourself that question. And there are a couple of key considerations when you're asking yourself that question. The first is the category. So are you operating in a category or sector that is very much brand led? So there are big brands that spend lots of money on advertising and they've got really high awareness and people buy into the brand, they buy into the premiumization. Or is it more of a market that sits at the commodity end of the scale, that brand isn't that important and it's more about availability and price than it is about brand? Now, if you're in a more brand-led market, this would suggest that the direct-to-consumer revolution has probably happened already, or is certainly happened already, and it probably means that there'll be less resistance, I would suggest, to your move and your decision. Also, you've then got how do customers shop. If customers are already shopping online for your category, and the retailers that you sell through are not doing a good job of serving that customer, then of course you have to intervene. That's a very credible argument to the retailers to say, well, we know people are buying these products, this category online, but you're not servicing those customers, so we need to do something about it. The second element is your brand. And a very simple data point is, do you have a strong market share? Because the stronger your market share, and this very much ties in with the second point you can see on the screen around how much demand do the retailers have for your products. If you've got strong market share and retailers have strong demand, again, they're not going to like your decision a huge amount, but they're not going to be able to do as much about it because they're not going to want to sacrifice the sales within their category. Remember, buyers are only concerned with selling products out in an acceptable time at an acceptable profit. And if you're a strong brand in your category and they sell lots of your products, and again, if it's done in the right way, there shouldn't be too much conflict. They're not just going to delist you overnight. And that's probably the main point here, is you've got to do as best as you can to avoid the doomsday thinking. The line of thinking that says, if we start selling direct to consumer, we'll be delisted from every retailer the following day. Now, there's risk. There is definitely risk, and it needs to be considered and managed properly. But what we have always found is that if it's done right, in the right way, both communication with the retailer and the execution of this multi-channel strategy, it's never as bad as you think. And as I've said, and we'll talk about in a second, if it's done right, everyone should grow. Now, if you are thinking about this, either starting or investing more heavily and focusing more attention at the world of direct to consumer, we believe you should be very open with your buyers, with the trade, and you should brief them fully. And just some very top line advice is be early. Don't leave this to the last minute. I mean, the worst thing you can do is not communicate. You know, if your buyer sees that you've done a new website, or they see that you've started to invest more money in paid advertising, or they suddenly see that you can buy products from your website where you couldn't yesterday, and you haven't communicated that with them, that's the worst place you can be. And we are not advocates of that. We believe you should be very early, very honest, and be really prepared when you're communicating with buyers and updating them of your plans. And we break that into 3 sections. The first is tell them why. Why are you doing it? You know, within reason. I wouldn't go in and say, we want to steal all your sales and make more money. And that really shouldn't be the objective. But you might be doing this to reach new customer groups that those retailers don't serve. You might be doing it to test new products, or potentially you're doing it to drive better margin sales so you can reinvest that money in brand building and advertising, which will grow demand for everybody. These are just some examples. Your why will be unique to you, but you need to give them a level of detail on why you're doing what you're doing. You then need to share with them how. And the first point on here is the most important. You need to share not just what you're doing in the world of direct to consumer. You don't go to them and you say, we've launched a new website, we're spending money on advertising, we're going to sell these products, and we'll never lead on price. That's a very typical brief that we see. Actually, what you need to do is you need to show them how direct to consumer forms an integrated part of your overall business and commercial strategy, and how that part is going to work with them and the other parts of the plan to deliver a result that's bigger than the sum of the parts. That's a bit of a mouthful, but you need to communicate with them the broad plan that includes retail and brand building and product and direct to consumer, and how it all fits together. Of course, you've got product and pricing. They're going to be really keen to know what product you're selling and at what prices. We'll come on to that in a second. And tell them about digital advertising. If you're going to start spending lots of money on Google search, particularly if you're going to start bidding on your brand term or on sort of key category keywords, it's just worth having a fairly honest discussion, so you're not both bidding on the same stuff, and that just drives the price up and no one wins really. So there's some marketing to marketing conversations that can be really beneficial there. And then finally, what else are you going to do, or can you do, to provide further support as part of the holistic strategy to the retailer? Does it include additional trade marketing support? Are you going to invest in new point of sale for stores, in new content for their websites, and in a whole host of other things under that trade marketing banner? Retail media is an accelerating trend. It's being driven primarily by Amazon, unsurprisingly, but most retailers out there have a really good proposition when it comes to retail media. So that's buying media within their ecosystem and accessing their data, which is really the major benefit of it, plus being able to, really accurately track attribution. Did this money spent on Argos's website deliver a sale, yes or no? The attribution is much tighter within the retail media ecosystem. So can you spend some money there? Does that lend itself to your overall holistic strategy? And then finally, and slightly more developed, is digital integration. So there are tools out there that allow you to be able to publish on your website if your retailers are in stock or out of stock. And all of that information is held in the back end. And that's another thing that you can do to become more collaborative with your retailers, as opposed to thinking of your channels in silos. Again, these are just guides. These are things that we see quite often, but your why, how, and what will be unique to you. So brief the trade. That is really important. Now, finally, we've briefed the trade. We're going into implementation and execution mode. How do you manage your business across multiple channels so the whole grows profitably? That's really the goal, right? And the first thing to acknowledge is that we are all looking at a market from the top down, all right? And customers are looking from the market bottom up. And the reality is, customers, human beings that don't work in the world of business, sales, and marketing, they just do not recognize channels. It's not terminology that they are aware of. We've gone through this evolution over the last 10 to 15 years from sort of multi-channel commerce where customers shop in certain places, be it store or from a mail order catalog or online, to this cross-channel commerce where one customer would maybe shop in multiple channels for different products, to where we are today, and we have been honestly for a number of years, is this omni-channel commerce where stores and apps and catalogs and social media and email marketing and websites, they all just form part of a journey to the customer. And that journey is them just trying to buy a product that they need. They are not recognizing or resonating with how we as business people define channels. And that is really important to recognize, because what you need to do is give your customer a single brand experience. And what I mean by that is you need to remove or reduce as much as possible any of the frictions that might be in that customer's journey when they're trying to decide what power drill or any other product to buy. Now, you do that through trying to manage your marketing mix. This is a very traditional but still sound model on what brands can do within their marketing mix. So you've got product and price, you've got distribution, which we'll come on to in a second, and you've got marketing communications. But a friction would be your product being 9 different prices across the website and in stores. A friction would be the product that's available on your website being slightly different to the product that they can buy in Currys. Or a friction would be your brand looking entirely different in store to how it looks online. And there are hundreds of these. There's some great articles out there. I'll maybe provide some links actually to Zara to send out straight after this, around what brands can do and how they can approach this to try and remove and reduce and to minimize all of these micro frictions in a customer journey. Now, the ideal state is to have 100% continuity and consistency across your marketing mix delivered through your distribution channels. The reality for most is that's just not possible. You have to be a powerhouse brand, the likes of Apple and Dyson, to be able to do this and to implement it without having huge short-term repercussions. So what we usually talk to clients about is integration. Rather than 100% consistency, find a way to reduce your frictions, but work towards having a holistic marketing plan or business strategy that is integrated across distribution. And of course, when we're looking at distribution today, we're looking at it through a retail lens and through a direct to consumer lens, but we're ultimately trying to reach customers. And what's really interesting, and this is fairly recent, this development, is what stores identify as places to buy products. Sorry, what customers identify as places to buy products are physical stores, our websites, and within websites, our apps and marketplaces. Okay. Now, we as business people have traditionally associated retail with stores and direct to consumer more so with websites and marketplaces. But the world is changing very quickly. And if we look at the world of retail, I'll come on to a couple of those other points in a second. There is a huge shift happening for retailers to get far more involved in marketplaces. I'll give you two examples. The likes of Toolstation are launching on eBay to sell both refurb and new stock, right? So they're utilizing an existing marketplace. But you've also got, and I'm sure you've all heard, the likes of B&Q launching their own marketplace. So this shift from retailers to be selling in their stores, more recently on their websites, they're now pushing into the marketplace space. That's a bit of a mouthful, the marketplace space, because they see that's where customers are going to find products. Now, a couple of other considerations within retail when you're thinking about intuition is the first question to ask is, where must you be available? Okay, so what are the destination stores for your product category? And my power drill B&Q is a really good example of that. I needed a drill. The default to get it today, so physically go and get one from somewhere, was B&Q. That's the first place that I thought of and went to. And each category will have its own destination retailers. I think SDA, so small domestic appliances, would be very strongly associated with Currys, possibly AO. But AO in the online space is a little bit more medium size, so fridge freezers and stuff. But identify your destination retailers, then have a think about which retailers are more conversion outlets. And this is where Amazon used to play, and they still play primarily. But what Amazon have done a great job of over the last 5 years is becoming the destination for certain product categories. It's the first place people go, particularly younger customers go for lots of products now. They don't even use Google. They don't go to stores. They go straight to Amazon to research, browse, and convert. And then, of course, you've got impulse retail. So you wouldn't want to spend lots of money on impulse. Destination is where you'd focus your point of sale and your trade marketing support. But there are retailers out there, the likes of Aldi and Lidl are good examples, that provide really good opportunities for you to sell lots of stock in a short amount of time to customers that you might otherwise not have reached. And that's what we mean by impulse. You're not going to put a huge amount of long-term investment and effort there, but there are some really strong opportunities for you to obviously sell more product and grow the brand. The last thing I wanted to mention in retail, and there's so much more to talk about here, but I'm trying to keep it to half an hour. And within retail is in-store versus online only, and within online only, dropship. Now, retailers have aggressively been growing their online only ranges for years now in direct response to Amazon and other marketplaces, and trying to offer greater choice to customers. Now, whether or not you believe choice is a good thing is definitely a discussion for another webinar, and we'll touch on that next time, actually, when we look at the world of product. But you have to be really clear in your own mind as to what the benefit is to you for being sold in a retailer. Now, you might not have this luxury. You might be fighting to get into any retailer you can, but you should start with an ideal state. And ideal state for most brands in most categories, I say that a lot, don't I? But most brands in most categories is in-store distribution, because that is where you get the physical availability, and it also drives really strong brand perceptions. That the fact that B&Q or Currys or Tesco or whoever list you immediately gives your brand credibility. Now, there are some exceptions to that where online only can work quite well, and drop shipping I've seen work quite well, but I would say it's in more of the minority for most. Usually what we see are brands rushing into online only deals, and all that happens is price gets eroded because they're not really destination for that product. The product's not getting any visibility on the retailer's website because it's tucked in in a subcategory way back somewhere, and they just want to start selling product at really low margin because they don't need to make much money, particularly with dropship. So you've just got to watch there. Is online only really good for you or not? That's just a consideration. Now, in the world of D2C as a distribution channel, we usually advocate that your website, your transactional e-commerce brand website, needs to be the fundamental destination for things like brand campaigns. So if you're doing a big, seasonal or media campaign, try and be driving people or suggesting people find out more or buy now at your website. Because from a commercial perspective, done right, the website's where you want to transact the sale. You can also use the in-market audiences. So if people are searching for your product category on Google or even on Amazon, or are showing interest via social media channels, you can try and capture that interest, bring it to your website, and then convert it. And the final point is that if you have a brand, doesn't have to be a really strong brand, but you have a brand and you have a website, you probably already have traffic, and you almost inevitably have traffic. And people are coming to your website because they're trying to find out more about your products. By simply offering them the option to buy those products, you're not going to lead on price, definitely not, but just providing them the option, you're going to convert some of those browsers into customers. So just by offering that, you should start to see some sales coming through. Another thing that we're working on a lot at the moment with current clients is almost within direct to consumer, you have to channel manage, because you've got your website and then you've got marketplace. If you're treating Amazon as a seller rather than a vendor, you've really got to see that seller account on Amazon as a channel within direct to consumer. And one of the things that we're doing a lot at the moment is experimenting with ways to get customers to discover products on Amazon, but then ultimately buy them from the brand's website. And we're doing some really, really cool stuff in that space and experimenting with different tactics with some of our clients, and with some really good success. So Amazon are expensive. You lose the data. Their fees are extortionate. Advertising is expensive. So there are really strong commercial reasons to drag people across onto your website. And we're starting to do that. It's a really, really relatively new development, but some really interesting stuff. And then finally, I had to touch on physical space within direct to consumer. So you are still selling direct to the end customer, but you're doing it either through a store that you own or through an in real life event. Now, this is not going to be that relevant to most of you, but we are seeing this trend now. So like we've got really traditional retailers like B&Q going into the marketplace space, we've now got the likes of Gymshark. They're a clothing brand and apparel brand that were purely direct to consumer online, and they use social media to drive all of it. They're now opening stores. So you've got this like direct to consumer brands are coming into the in real life physical space, and you've got retail bricks and mortar brands coming the other way. And it's just, there's a lot going on at the moment. But I think the point here, the point I was trying to make, as well as give you as much information in a short amount of time as possible, is look for integration and harmony across the channels, and think about what role retail plays, what role direct to consumer plays, because once you've got that clear, you can be much more specific with, well, how does that impact your product strategy or your pricing strategy, or how do you need to market and communicate with customers? But the final point I want to leave you with is really the goal is always growth. Okay, now growth will mean different things to different people. It might be top line, it might be profitability, it might be right sizing the business for future growth. But growth is the objective. And direct to consumer should never be done in a way that jeopardizes your other business or your business that is being done through other channels. And this is what we see. This is why JDS exists, honestly, because we see brands run to digital marketing agencies, set up a new website, start selling products. They haven't really thought it through. They're making bad choices, and they're also jeopardizing their existing business. The goal is to do direct to consumer in a way that acknowledges traditional sales and acknowledges traditional marketing, that grows the overall business. And that's what we believe direct to consumer can do for pretty much every brand in the consumer durable space, if it's done right. And that's what we're trying to help everyone with this workshop. And that is the end of today's session. So we've done why direct to consumer and the biggest mistakes. We've just gone deep on distribution and retail relationships. We've got a bit of a break now, but we will be back towards the end of June to talk more about product and brand and communication. So if you go back to the marketing mix, we had product, price, marketing, communications, and distribution. We've gone deep on distribution. We're going to go deep on product, pricing, and communications next time, and how to manage products across multiple channels, pricing strategies, all of those types of things. And then about a month later in July, we will try and bring it all together for you and give you some really specific advice on how to build it into a holistic strategy to drive growth. If you can't wait that long, you can follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow me or my team or our LinkedIn page. You can go to our website where we put loads of content, articles, videos, frameworks, all sorts of stuff, all about growing direct to consumer in the right way. And we also have a newsletter that comes out every couple of weeks. And we tend to share our opinions on what's going on right now, and also share some really detailed pieces around direct to consumer strategy and some other points. So go and sign up for our newsletter on our website, or just send me a note afterwards. And yeah, check us out on LinkedIn and on our website. That is it from me.